There's this very interesting phenomena that's been happening among, I would say, mostly the Christian crowd, where the things that they feel are necessary to say, the things that they feel are necessary to do. And I'm going to say for anyone that does call themselves a Christian, if you don't stand up and say that this is not part of my ideology, that you are simply adding your voice to it by not saying anything, because not doing anything is an agreement. And if somebody stands up in your religious faith and says this is true, and you don't say no, this is not true, or it's not true for all, then you're kind of buying into it. And I have a basic same test as Socrates is said to have used for whether or not something was worthy of repeating. He is said to have had a 3-filter test. Some say he did, some say he didn't, but it is attributed to him. And the 3-filter test for whether he said it was worth to actually repeat something that you had heard was, number one, is it the truth? Does it correspond to reality? Is it true or false? The second, is it of goodness? Is it morally good or bad? Is it beneficial or harmful? And the third, is it useful? Does it serve a purpose, or is it just idle talk? And so I, for myself personally, have a new criteria that I use for any philosophy or religion or any standard that somebody wants to bring forth. And the first one, is it relevant? Does it actually pertain to anything in this modern day life? You hear so many times that God never changes. But that's interesting how what we say is His word, or what His believers say is His word, does change. And you can absolutely see it if you do any kind of studying of what is called the Holy Bible. You will find it has had so many different iterations. On top of, even in its most latest translations, there are a number of different ones. Not only number of different translations, but even different books that include different gospels in them. So that right there shows you that, according to man, the Word of God changes. So is it relevant? I would say a lot of it really is not relevant. I mean, when we're talking about things that were only relevant to those in the first and in the before Common Era time, we have refrigeration and we have other things going on. So a lot of those things just do not pertain to our modern day, and they have no relevance to us today. We have so much information, we have so much to take care of. The last thing we need to worry about is something that is not relevant. The second thing, is it meaningful? In other words, does it have any meaning to our lives, in that is it going to advance us in any way? Is it something that actually makes any sense in today's world? And I would say that, kind of akin to the first one, a lot of it not really. And the third, is it useful? For instance, I'm just going to take it up there. Is it useful to talk about things that aren't even addressed in the Bible? For instance, like this huge fight over abortion, and yet Yeshua, some call Jesus, never once said anything about it. And on top of that, there were a lot of babies that were killed in the Bible according to by God. God killed a lot of babies, and Yeshua never once spoke of it. And then we'll go on to the transgender community and the queer community of all kinds. Yeshua never once addressed it, not a single time. And yet, he did say things like taking care of the orphans and the widows. He did say things about welcoming the foreigners into your home, about healing the sick, feeding the hungry, taking care of the poor and those that were below, that was something that we were called to do. So my litmus test for any kind of philosophy or religion or anything anybody has out there, for me personally, is number one, is it relevant? Is it meaningful? And is it useful? Now, if it is for you personally, that is great, but it is extremely egoic for you to assume that it is your right to push what works for you onto somebody else. And that makes me think of something else, and that's that truth never has to argue. So if it is adamant to you, if you have to have someone else to believe what you believe in so that you can keep your faith, that's not faith. That's not what that is. If you are able to stay in your own faith and you're well no matter what, and you know that if the Word of God is true and God's love is really true, that He's going to find a way, His own magical way of bringing people to Him, then you can just rest in that. But if you think that it is your job to somehow coerce and guilt and shame and push people into having your ideology, well, that's not love. I'm not going to say what it is, but it's certainly not love. So anyway, I just wanted to put that out there because there's so much of that going on out there nowadays. And I want you to ask yourself, or anything anybody's bringing onto you, or anything that you're trying to bring onto somebody else, is it relevant? Is it meaningful? And is it useful? And if it has any of those or all three of those, it's going to be of love. If it isn't, it's going to be of fear. And I have no use for it. Have any comments on that? Would love for you to do that. And if you don't agree with anything that's in this video, well, I suggest that you create your own video with your own opinions and allow others to comment on it. How about that? Love, peace, and release.